Hello again, this is Brett from Pleasant Breeze Farms. As promised in a previous video, I wanted to show you how I have set up my chicken watering system for wintertime use. I started with a proof of concept system that seemed to work fairly well, and now I am refining it, and I'll show you both. So what I started with is, first of all, I did have to go 120 volt to put a submersible heater in my system. So this is a 250 watt submersible heater. I'll pull it up out of here so you can see it. I wanted to get as low a voltage or wattage, low of a wattage as I could. There's no point in powering something more than it needs to be. So I started with a small 12 volt pump. Didn't think about it when I got the pump that it was not water rated as far as being in a wet environment. It's very humid inside here. So the system does work. So what it does is it picks up water right there off of the surface. It then pumps the water all the way down to the end of the pipe here. What that does is it keeps the water here in the pipe at a pretty steady, about 50 degrees. This is controlled by a temperature sensor. Runs up to this. Worked great for a while. It apparently does not like cold weather, but the red numbers are the ambient temperature and the blue numbers are the set temperature. So you can set it to heat or cool, and it did work as a proof of concept. So power coming in from my solar panel ran to on off switch here up to the temperature control, which was also controlled by the temperature sensor that then powered the 12 volt pump, again, that picks water up off of the surface, which also I realized that the surface level obviously changes because I'm pouring water into the system during the winter time rather than using my float. So I needed something different, which I'll show you here in just a second, as far as a pump with a better, more stable control system. And what I realized was I already had 120 volts here for my heater. So instead of forcing myself to use 12 volts off of my solar panels, I figured this is a wintertime setup. It's used for 3 months out of the year. I'll go ahead and embrace the 120 volts of power that I have available to me. I'm going to abandon this proof of concept. Obviously it worked for about 2 weeks, and then the controller failed. It got down to about 14 degrees about 2 nights ago, 1st of December. So I have a Wi-Fi Inkbird brand temperature controller that I bought from Amazon with 120 volt input and output, and then I transformed that down to 12 volt output and then connected it directly to a C-Flow 12 volt pump with 3/8 inch silicone tubing. This is all controlled by the built-in temperature sensor on the Inkbird control box, where I can set my output temperature. So what this does is it determines at 45 degrees that the water temperature is too low, and it cycles the pump, pumping water to the end of the pipe, the watering pipe. Here's a close-up of my control box. Is a adjustable voltage. I've chosen 12 volt output, and again it is connected to the C-Flow submersible pump, 12 volt pump, and again 3/8 inch silicone tubing, so it's and here's a overview of the whole system before I install it. As I stated in an earlier video, even though we have to manually fill the water in the coldest of wintertime, the system works perfectly. There's the current temperature on the top, the set temperature on the bottom, and the cups are still liquid with water in them. Water is being pumped from here, water is being pumped from here down to the very end of this pipe, keeping the water all warm with no issues. This is not hooked up on the other end, over there. But the system works exactly as designed. Very pleased with this. It's nice to be able to see this Wi-Fi via Wi-Fi and change it if I want to. That's hooked up to the pump. This is hooked up to power. So I've got, this is the heater. This is the Wi-Fi controller, and then this, I'm letting this charge the batteries during the winter time for my solar panels. Here are some screenshots for the Inkbird app. Here's the main screen showing the weather and the device that's online. Here's the main screen showing the current temperature of the water. And then the last screen is a chart of the water temperature over time in a line graph form. One other item I've added that you may have noticed is that instead of a stick sticking up out of the top as a float, I've added this tube on the side that shows the water level. There is a fishing float in the top. Seems to be stuck in the top right now. I think it might have gotten frozen in place, but it normally floats right there on top of the water, so you can see the height of the water from the house.